So here's an example. The companies that make breakfast cereal will actually pay the grocery store to put their bright colored like fruits, cereal boxes with toys in it to bribe the children, and they'll pay to make sure that their cereal is at the kid level. So that when the parent takes the child shopping, the child sees the cute cartoon character on the front of the box and the free toy that they get from Star Wars. And it's like, Mom, I gotta have it. And it's called, there's a technical term for this in marketing called pester power. And the fact is, pester power is incredibly powerful because parents at the end of the day will buy just about anything to end the pester power.
Hey guys, today our guest is Eric Edmeades. He's an internationally recognized speaker, author, and a health transformation expert. Prior to this, Eric was a serial entrepreneur who owned a quite range of businesses ranging from mobile computing to Hollywood special effects, where his companies worked on blockbuster movies such as Avatar, Transformers, Pirates of Caribbean Sea, and Iron Man, to name a few. But in his 20s, he suffered from major health problems like severe allergies, throat infections, sinus troubles, acne, and etc., which led him to go for a surgery. But before going to a surgery, his friend stopped him and urged him to attend a health seminar, which then totally transformed Eric's perspective on health and food. Today, Eric is a hero in the field of evolutionary biology and nutritional anthropology. And Eric has created wildfit, which is a step-by-step approach to transform people's health with ease. And Eric has also received a medal from Canadian Senate for his work on transforming people's lives. So I proudly welcome Eric Edmeades. Thank you, Eric, for coming onto the show.
Hey, hello. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for coming by. And before we go into the questions, where can people connect with you, Eric?
Well, maybe one of the best places is Instagram. I manage my own Instagram account. So when I reply, it's really me. They can also find us on getwildfit.com and ericedmeades.com.
Thank you, Eric. And my first question to you is, why should people learn how to read ingredients behind food products?
I think it's really as simple as this. There are things that are good for you and there are things that are bad for you. And if you don't take the time to look at the ingredients, then you're letting yourself get fed by somebody, and you're letting yourself get fed by a company that cares more about their profits than your health. So when they're choosing the ingredients, they're not choosing the ingredients for like your maximum health experience. They're choosing their ingredients for profitability, which means that they're maybe choosing ingredients that are not all that nutritionally wonderful. They're choosing ingredients that are working on the preservation of the food rather than the nutritional value of the food. And they're including ingredients that might be even addictive in order to remove your choice so that you don't have a choice about whether or not you're eating that food. So reading the ingredients is like, the minimum we should be doing.
Eric, you were one of the first persons I have seen on the internet to clearly explain ingredients. If you don't mind, can you explain like what are preservatives, emulsifiers, stabilizers?
You're asking me to explain what the different ingredients are doing?
I mean, you clearly explained that why preservatives are dangerous. And
remember that anything that you put in your body that doesn't have a purpose in your body is just going to require energy for you to get it out, right? Like it's not there for you. So, when a food has a preservative in it, I'm not saying that that preservative is necessarily terrible for you. It may be, it may not be, but it's work for you. In other words, the preservative is there to make the food last unnaturally long. And that, always bothers me anyway. I don't know how that's going to affect digestion and all that sort of stuff. But in the meantime, the real truth of it is you're putting an ingredient into your body that your body has no use for, which means now your body has to deal with that ingredient, which means it's going to take energy. So it's not ideal. Same thing with, when you think about like chemical flavorings and that kind of stuff. Basically, if you think about what artificial flavoring is, and by the way, there's almost no difference between artificial flavoring and natural flavoring, at least in terms of the way the US laws work about this, is that in order to call an artificial flavor a natural flavor, you just have to add enough natural ingredient to it that it's now a natural flavor, even if most of it's artificial. But think about why we would add artificial flavoring to something. We want to make it taste like something that your body likes. In other words, your body doesn't like this thing, and now we're going to trick your body into liking it. And so I'm not a big fan of those either.
Eric, you have said that vanilla was prepared by using rat poop. Can you explain that?
Well, yeah, I don't think vanilla's made this way anymore. I hope to God it isn't. But apparently the original, one of the sources of vanilla flavoring was not vanilla itself. I mean, of course there was vanilla, but then there was a form of natural flavoring of vanilla, which came from the gland of a beaver, which is, a mammal commonly found, I think, in Canada and some other places in Northern Europe. And it's a gland right near the rectal passage. And apparently that gland excretes this liquid that they used to use for vanilla flavoring. So if you see the difference between something that has an ingredient between, say, the ingredient says vanilla, then it says it has vanilla. But if it says it has vanilla flavoring, well, then maybe it's got some kind of butt secretion from some mammal in Canada.
Eric, you said that 70% of food products contain sugar. Can you explain why sugar is bad?
It's not that sugar's bad. I'm not one of these people that says sugar is bad. I think that our ancestors consumed sugar whenever they possibly could. It's just that they couldn't very often. The fruits were very seasonal and only available for a short time, and honey was hard to find and involved bees, so it wasn't like it was a daily occurrence. And so sugar itself isn't bad. What's bad is too much sugar, too regular sugar, and fake sugar. And now we start getting into real problems. If our ancestors, found some berries that were in season, they'd go ahead, they'd eat those berries, they'd get a big insulin rush, big sugar rush, lots of insulin production. And then, a week later, the fruit would be gone from the trees and it would be over. And it was a temporary measure, not a lifestyle. The trouble we have today is that most people are putting that level of stress on their pancreas every day, not a few weeks of the year.
Yes, Eric. Eric, what is your opinion on artificial sweetness?
I don't agree with them. I think that if I want to sweeten something, then I want to sweeten it with something that my body naturally recognizes as a healthy sweetener. So I might choose sugar, for example, not processed garbage refined sugar, but say like raw cane sugar or honey or maple syrup or something like that. Now, again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying those things are good for you. I'm saying, you know what? I don't want to live in a world where I can't have a little bit of sweetness from time to time. But the difference that I think we have to pay attention to is how often we do that and how much we do it. And that really is the problem, as well as all the fake ways that we do it. When you're using a fake sweetener, again, you're back to this issue of introducing something to the body that the body has no use for, which means the body has to get it out. And that means it takes energy and it diverts the body from its, primary missions.
Eric, in India and in many Asian countries, many people are now becoming addicted to junk food. Can you say how food industries are brainwashing people to shift their consumption pattern towards unhealthy stuff?
It's not really a matter of brainwashing. I mean, I think there is some of that going on too, but it's really more a matter of a strategic campaign of habit forming, addiction forming, manipulation. And so how does it work? Well, one way is that, like, take a look in your culture. I mean, really, Indians have an incredible work ethic, right? You guys work hours that the average European would be killed by. And so what that means all of a sudden is if we want to get you addicted to fast food, one of the ways to do that is to make it really convenient. Right? Who has time for cooking when you're, working so hard? So now we get this situation where you can just simply drive by and pick it up or walk by and pick it up or have it delivered. And so convenience is one of the ways, and that's how they did it to the Americans. In Anaheim, California, when the fast food revolution started up and the idea of the drive-through, McDonald's and Dairy Queen and KFC and all those companies, what they did is they created, first of all, convenience. They made it super easy. Now, and I'm sorry, it was a sexist world back then. Maybe it still is today, but back now, mom doesn't have to cook. Mom doesn't have to do the dishes. Well, of course, she's going to want to do that 2-3 days of the week and not have to worry about it. Then on top of that, they added another very crafty thing called consistency. One of the things that humans like with their food is consistency. Like if I said to you, oh, I went to this really incredible restaurant, or let me put it differently. If you and I went to a really great restaurant and you ordered just the absolute best, prawn du piazza, and it was the best ever. And so you and I decide to go back there 2 weeks later. And then they bring you the same meal because you ordered the same meal. But when it arrives, it looks different. How would you feel about it?
I wouldn't like it.
You wouldn't like it. Right. But think about this. I didn't say it's worse. I just said it looks different. And so people really like consistency in their food. They would rather have the same sort of half nice meal all the time than a variety of meals where some are bad or some are good. So what did McDonald's and these guys do? They created absolute system perfect food. It's garbage. I mean, anybody on earth can make a burger better than McDonald's, but nobody can make that many burgers that consistently all the time. And so now you've got like this convenience factor. Now you've got consistency. So you have certainty. You know what you're going to get every single time you're going to get it. Then they start adding the ingredients. So let's add a lot of fat and not good fat, by the way, because fat can be very good. I mean, you got to have good fat, but they put a lot of gross fat, a lot of like huge amounts of bad quality salt. And then of course they add a lot of sugar to everything. And so the next thing you know, not only have they made it convenient, not only have they made it consistent, but now they've started adding things that your body is wanting on some level in a big way. And so you eat this very high calorie meal and your body goes, wow, you're a hell of a hunter gatherer. You're doing a great job. And it rewards you with all these rewarding chemicals in your body. And so now you've got a habit forming. And then even some of those ingredients like caffeine and sugar are physically addictive. And so then they add that to it as well. By the time they're done, you don't have a choice anymore. You no longer have freedom.
Eric, what tricks grocery stores use on customers to make them buy unhealthy food? For example, you said they use pesta power, right?
At the end of the day, the grocery stores put on the shelves what people are buying. You know, if you stopped buying that thing with sugar in it, if everybody stopped buying it, they'd stop putting it there. So it's not like grocery stores are inherently evil, but what they are after is profit. So what do the companies do? It's not just the grocery stores, it's the food manufacturers. You have to go back to them. So here's an example. The companies that make breakfast cereal will actually pay the grocery store to put their bright colored like fruits, cereal boxes with toys in it to bribe the children, and they'll pay to make sure that their cereal is at the kid level, so that when the parent takes the child shopping, the child sees the cute cartoon character on the front of the box and the free toy that they get from Star Wars. And it's like, mom, I gotta have it. And it's called, there's a technical term for this in marketing called pester power. And the fact is, pester power is incredibly powerful because parents at the end of the day will buy just about anything to end the pester power. So that's one way. Another way is just with the coloring itself. Go and look at the candy section in any store. The colors are all a mix of commonly primary colors that you would frequently see on fruit. So they're coloring them in a way that your instincts look at it and go, oh, look, it's good for me. And so it's manipulating your nervous system. Then what do? Well, let's go back to convenience. What is at the checkout counter in just about every checkout in just about every grocery store? All the spontaneous, high sugar, very sweet garbage that destroys your pancreas is sitting right there at the till. Why? Because you've got spare time. You're sitting there waiting anyway. So they'll give you something to end that boredom with. They'll give you something that you can make a quick decision and go, oh, look, I just like to have this here chocolate bar or this here candy.
Eric, should we believe the products that say or claim to be healthy?
No, not at all. I mean, in fact, the louder they scream about being healthy, the more I'd be suspect of them. If you need to tell you that it's healthy, probably it isn't. I mean, nobody has to tell you that that orange is healthy for you. Nobody has to tell you that that grass-raised, organic beef is good for you. I get that that's probably not very popular in India, so you can edit that out. But you get my point. Nobody, when we're talking about primary evolutionarily food that we've had an evolutionary relationship, nobody has to tell you that it's healthy for you. They only have to tell you it's healthy for you when they're trying to convince you that it's healthy, when it's pretty obvious that it's not, like a box of breakfast cereal. I mean, that's not healthy for you. There is no healthy breakfast cereal. I'm not saying you can't have it from time to time. Let's just not lie to ourselves and pretend it's healthy.
Eric, what do you say to the people who say that as a human being, we have to enjoy things and should not restrict foods?
Well, then as a human being, maybe you should snort cocaine and smoke a lot of weed and take a lot of drugs and drink a lot of alcohol. And why not do all that? Life's short. Because there's consequences. Yes, exactly the point. Life is short. Why shorten it? Why shorten the quality of it? Like here, look. Somebody goes, well, life's short. I want to just enjoy myself right now. Okay. you know, what about cancer? What about heart disease? What about diabetes? I'm not worried about that. I feel invincible. Okay, let's be clear that 100 years ago, cancer and heart disease and diabetes were not in the top 10 killers in the Western world. They weren't even in the top 10 100 years ago. Today, cancer's number one, or I think cancer's number two, heart disease is number one, diabetes is way up there in the number 10, but diabetes is complicated because it leads to a lot of other types of death and suffering. And it's not just that it might shorten somebody's life, because, you know, these days we have such good medical technology that it might not shorten your life that much. But I'll tell you what it is going to do, absolutely devastate your quality of life for the last 15 or 20 years. Look, when somebody has a massive coronary event, when they have a huge heart attack, all right, they died. Their family didn't suffer for 3 years and they didn't cost the medical system a huge amount of money. But when somebody develops cancer, their family suffers. Their society suffers because it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for all the treatments. And maybe one of the reasons that they're going through that and that burden is being placed on society is that we have a food manufacturing system that's designed for profits and not for health. So at the end of the day, we are buying and eating junk food because life is short and we want to enjoy ourselves. Only then we're going to have this really unpleasant dying process, and unpleasant for our family and incredibly expensive for society.
Eric, you say that human beings are the only species on the earth who are confused about their diet. Can you explain that?
Well, I'll put it a different way. It's that the animals on Earth that live in accordance with their evolved nutritional requirements, food collection, and processing capacities are the animals that are experiencing the closest you can to optimal health. I'm not saying they don't get sick. I'm not saying they don't get injured. And of course, living in nature has its own other dangers as well. But at the end of the day, when an organism is living in accordance with its evolved physical requirements in nutrient and otherwise, and its evolved food capturing and processing methods, then it's healthy. And so what's going on with humans is we're no longer doing that. Look, when they first used to put elephants in the zoos, nobody knew that elephants were supposed to live like 70 years. So they only lived 10 years in the zoo and nobody was worried about that. But when they learned that they could live like 70 years, all of a sudden these people thought, wow, I could get way more return on my investment. I better find out what's going on. And you know what they figured out was that if they fed the elephants the way elephants in the wild eat, if they let the elephants walk around a lot like the elephants in the wild do, if they gave them enough fresh water like the elephants in the wild have, then those elephants started to live a lot longer. In fact, those elephants could live even longer than the ones in the wild because the wild has other dangers. So we, as humans, we have the opportunity to learn from that. What we can do is recognize that we live with incredible medical miracles. We live in the safest times in the history of times. We don't kill each other hardly at all. You know, we hardly ever fight. We live in real safety. And if we combine the incredibly safe environment that we live in, and then we eat in accordance with our evolutionary design, then we can live longer than we ever have ever in history.
Eric, maybe this is the reason why you say that human beings are not the most intelligent species on the earth.
Well, I don't say that we're not the most intelligent species on Earth. I just think intelligence can be measured a whole lot of ways. And what I would say is this, that we are incredibly intelligent, clearly, and we are the dominant species on the planet. The challenge, of course, is that doesn't mean we know everything. And so we have put ourselves in a situation where some of our instincts are out of control and we haven't brought conscious thought to the process yet. And one way I can explain it is like this. If it's 100,000 years ago and there's no such thing as agriculture yet, and you and I are walking along and we return to camp one day, and it's a camp we camped at 1 year ago because we were moving, you know, with the herds and with the water changes and so on. And we got back to the camp and we noticed that there were some plants growing over in the corner where last year we threw all the seeds when we were eating all the plants. And you and I think, wait a second, can we grow plants? Wow, what an incredible thought. You mean we could grow them so we knew where they were, so we wouldn't have to go looking for them all the time? That's amazing. So then we'd start thinking about which plants we wanted to grow. And I'm going to guess that you and I would probably choose to grow the plants that we like the taste of. That's where it starts going wrong, right in that moment. Right there, that's where the food manufacturing system went wrong. The minute we started growing foods for reason other than nutritional sustenance, we grew it because it had reaped a good harvest. We grew it because it could store a long time like grains. We grew it because it was really yummy like super sweet fruits. And then we started breeding them to make them even better at all that. That's where it started to go wrong. It was because of our incredible intelligence that we were able to do that. And it was also because the consequences of our behavior was so delayed that we weren't able to spot the pattern until now. And so what we didn't recognize is that we were causing our own diseases, and we were causing our own pain and suffering. And so now what I'm suggesting is our intelligence can kind of be called into question a little bit if we don't start to learn.
Yes, Eric. And Eric, you have a unique perspective on exercise. Can you share that with our audience?
I'm not sure which perspective you're thinking of. Maybe it's, look, exercise I think is unbelievably important. I think that your body is one of the grand examples of if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. I can put it this way that, if you have a collector's edition of a car, say a Ford Mustang 1965, and I've got the same one, and you leave yours in the garage and you never drive it ever, and I drive mine 2 miles every day, mine is going to last longer than yours, which is weird because a car is not a regenerative machine. In other words, the car doesn't get stronger with use, but without minimum use, it will lock up and it'll seize up and it'll die. And our bodies are very much like that as well, only with one added thing, and that is that we are regenerative. In other words, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. So your bones, for example, absolutely require impact and torque. They need to be stressed. The more they get stressed, the more your body assigns calcium to them and the stronger they get. Your muscles are the same. If you want to turn your muscle fibers on or off, you got to use them. You want to grow more muscles, you got to use them. If you don't, then they'll turn off and stop growing and they'll actually shrink. And then on top of that, there's another really important aspect to it, and that is that your body has a number of systems that are powered by pumps. So your blood is pumped around the body by your heart because blood is both urgent and important. And air is pumped along your body, first of all, by the diaphragm and then by the heart in the blood. But it's pumped by the diaphragm first because air is urgent and important. But you also have lymphatic fluid, and lymphatic fluid goes around and cleans your body, cleans your cells. And, it's making sure that you're clean and healthy inside and everything's good. And it doesn't have a pump because it's not urgent. It's only important. And so as a consequence, there's no pump. And on top of that, we didn't need a pump because nature made us move. We didn't have a choice. We had to walk to go get water, to go and hunt, to go and gather. We didn't have a choice. We didn't have like food delivery on an app. We didn't have even a grocery store. We didn't have cars. We had to move around. And so our general movement acted as the pump for lymphatic flow. And so when we do not move enough, which is really important, particularly right now during this whole pandemic lockdown thing, is that there are a lot of people not really moving. I can tell you there's sickness coming for them. They need to be moving around and getting their lymph flowing. And then one last thought, which might be what your question was really about, and that is that you cannot exercise your way to health. You cannot outrun a bad habit, a bad diet. You just can't. First thing that's important with your health is getting your diet right. And then you can get healthier by adding an exercise. But when somebody starts doing really harsh exercise while they're eating bad stuff and not getting enough of the good stuff, they're simply asking for injury and failure.
Yes, Eric. And Eric, our ancestors did not have access to fresh water daily, right? So, do you believe that we should drink 8 glasses of water every day?
One of the reasons that we need to drink water like that today is that our ancestors got a lot of their water from the foods they were eating. They didn't have pottery and water bottles and plumbing and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the water they got was opportunistic. In other words, they knew where there was a spring or a river or a lake or something like that, and they would go there and drink, but they couldn't be at the water all the time. If they were out hunting, for example, they wouldn't have that. So what do? Well, one thing we do is we store water in our fat cells. We store a lot of water. We store a lot of water. And the funny thing is that a lot of people go to do endurance sports and they feel like they need to drink all the way along. The truth is, if they drank a lot of water and ate a lot of water-rich foods for the 3 or 4 days before the endurance sport, they might be able to do a lot of that sport without even drinking water except for the dry mouth. So what we traditionally did is got a lot of our water from the plants that we were eating. And so as a consequence, one of the problems with that today is that a lot of times when people are a little bit dehydrated, and many times they are because they don't drink water, they drink diuretic things like Coke or coffee, Pepsi, garbage like that. And they're not drinking enough water. And then on top of that, a lot of the food we eat doesn't have water in it anymore. And so a lot of people are a little bit dehydrated. And the crazy thing is, because we used to get so much of our water from our food, when we're dehydrated now, we get a craving to eat food. In other words, when we're dehydrated, we feel hungry. And that's a problem because then we often go out and eat food that doesn't have water. And so it makes the problem worse.
Eric, what is your opinion on calorie restriction?
I think calorie restriction is pointless. I think that, let me put that another way. There are purposes for calorie restriction when it's specific around fasting. But as a method of dieting, I think it's insanity. I think it's based on a very old paradigm and a myth of the diet industry that largely was built and created by the food industry. They basically said, look, we don't want them to be mad at us. We want them to be mad at calories. If we can get them to be mad at calories, then they won't be mad at us. So let's make them mad at calories. And then we can make like no calorie versions of things, which is fine because sugar is really expensive anyway. So what we'll do is we'll find a cheaper sweetener. We'll put that in there and we'll call it no calorie. And then they're mad at the calories. They're not mad at us and everything's fine. And so now we're mad at calories. Calories are not the problem. Your body knows how to regulate calories. In fact, you can eat a phenomenal number of calories. You can eat more calories than you're burning in a day and lose weight if you're eating the right calories. But you can eat not enough calories. You can eat less calories than you're burning in a day, and you can actually not lose weight because your body starts to think it's in starvation mode and it becomes resistant to losing weight because it's worried you're starving to death.
Eric, you say that sugar consumption actually makes us hungry. Do you know the purpose of that?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a evolutionary throwback in my opinion. So the way it works is that winter for our ancestors did not mean, cold. It meant long, dry seasons, often droughts, and those seasons could be months or even years. And so nature runs through these cycles, and of course, usually before the drought, you've got this long summer and then a fall, and that's the harvest season. And during that time in summer and fall, that's when you would have been able to find really lots of root vegetables, carbohydrates, lots of berries and fruits, carbohydrates. And so when we go to eat those things, what happens is our body takes all the excess calories, the excess sugars, and says, wow, I might need these calories later in the drought. And so it takes those calories, adds them to water, and stores them as fat on your body. And so why we get hungry is that if you and I are walking along 100,000 years ago and we see some berries and we start eating them, well, we don't really know that winter's coming. I mean, maybe we do, but we don't have an app for that, right? It's just like nature. And so what happens is when we start eating all the berries, our body goes, oh, we're eating berries. We better start storing fat. Okay, we'll start storing fat. Well, we better eat more berries. And so what happens is you eat the berries, you get a blood sugar rush, then you start producing insulin, and then you have like this insulin shock where you've got too much insulin, and that creates a craving for more sugar. So then you want to go and eat more sugar, which creates another sugar rush, which makes you make more insulin, and it makes you gorge. In other words, we would have gone there often and maybe eaten way more than, in fact, stretched our stomachs. But our stomachs are expandable exactly for that reason. And so what that would have done is protected us from starving during the next winter.
Eric, how did you create wildfit?
I went through a really serious health transformation, like you mentioned before, and that made me very curious about food, nutrition, the medical industry, the pharma industry. I started getting really curious about health on the whole, and that kind of led to a lot of study of nutritional anthropology and evolutionary biology, and I got to a place where I had a really good sense, I believed, of ultimately what humans should be eating. And I do believe there's a baseline human diet. And then, of course, there's some modifications for different metabolisms in men and women and that kind of stuff. But generally, I felt like, no, hang on, every species on Earth has a diet, and so does sapiens. So here we are. But what happened next for me is I realized that I could talk until I was blue in the face, telling people this truth. And they could even believe me, but they often wouldn't change. They just wouldn't do it. They'd be like, yeah, I know, but I had a really bad day and I really wanted to eat this, or I had a really awesome day and I wanted to celebrate, or there was always an excuse. And it seemed like there was an excuse like multiple times a day. And so then I really started to dig into behavioral change psychology and how to create lasting change for people. And about 6 years ago, I decided to test it and combine those two things together, nutritional anthropology and behavioral change psychology. And I ran 8 clients through this 3-month process to see if I could change their behavior. I wasn't putting them on a diet, you understand. I was trying to change their behavior. And at the end of the 3 months, I had. They were all completely different. They'd completely changed their relationship with food, and most of them had incredible health recovery. So I did another class of 8 and another class of 8. And then it just started spreading from there. The word of mouth got out. And, we had all these stories of people turning around their type 2 diabetes, ending hypertension, repairing thyroid dysfunction, ending inflammation, losing weight, of course. And the word of mouth just exploded. And it's the easiest business I've ever started because it just took off on its own. We've now served over 20,000 people in 130 countries around the world. And it's the biggest honor of my life.
Eric, would you like to give a 7-day challenge to our subscribers?
You want me to just make up a 7-day challenge for them? All right, I'll give you a 7-day challenge. Here's the 7-day challenge. It has 2 parts. 1, only eat things after reading the ingredients. That's all. I'm not telling you don't eat it. And then secondly, every time you see sugar on the ingredients, I just want you to notice where it is and ask yourself why it's there, because you're going to get shocked that sugar is in so many of the foods you have. So just for 7 days, read the ingredients and notice if sugar is there and where sugar is on the list. Remember that wherever sugar is on the list, the list is always in order. So the number 1 ingredient is the thing there's the most of. Number 2 is the next ingredient. And so you're probably going to notice that sugar is very often the number 2 or 3 ingredient in a lot of foods that you might be surprised by. And so if you just for 7 days read the ingredients and notice the sugar, you might just start to find that you start wanting it a little less.
Eric, in the context of COVID-19, can you give some tips to strengthen the immune system?
That's a pretty straightforward thing. I think the first thing people need to understand is that there's a difference between immunity and the immune system. Immunity is something you get after being exposed to a pathogen. So in other words, you catch the disease or you get the vaccine and you're healed, and now you have immunity. That's one thing. The other thing is your immune system. In other words, the system your body uses to fight the pathogen while it tries to figure out how to build while it tries to build the antibodies. And so what we want to do is make sure, since if we don't have immunity, we want to make sure that we do everything we can to support immune function. In other words, we want to be as healthy and strong as possible. So there's a bunch of things that we need to do to make that happen. One of them is be calm. Stop spreading conspiracy theory garbage on the internet. Stop reading it. If your friends are spreading it, unfriend them, block them, get them out of your life. You don't want somebody giving you fear right now, because fear serves to push the immune system down. It's a very simple thing. The way that works is that your body knows that it has limited energy, and it determines where it needs to put that energy. And so if you are facing an immediate danger, your body goes, well, I don't need the immune system right now. I need my strength and speed. And so it kind of turns off the immune system and assigns everything over to escape or fight. And then when it's all done, you can go back to the immune system. Well, during that time, it's kind of like your shields are down. Only there are a lot of people right now, their shields are down the whole time. They're stressed out the whole time. Their friends are bombarding them with crap on the internet about 5G and conspiracy theories and garbage, when what they really need to be doing is doing good breathing exercises, meditating and yoga, and really calming their system. Now, the next thing you have to do is make sure you take care of the body's physical needs. If you don't take care of the body's physical needs, how can it fight for you? And so what does that mean? Well, the first physical need of the body is air, but it needs you to breathe the right quality of air. A lot of people are on lockdown right now. They're not allowed to go outside in some countries. They got to open the window, open the doors, let the air in, fresh air. Plus, they need to breathe deeply. Really nice, deep breathing will tell your body it's safe, and your immune system will respond positively. Then they have to have water. They got to stay hydrated. Best thing they could do is drink good quality water. I'm not talking about fancy pH balance. I'm talking the best thing would be nice mineral water, glacial runoff water, spring water. But at the end of the day, water. Get water in, stay hydrated. Then once we've taken care of that, then we need to take care of sleep. That's a physical need of the body. We have to sleep. Our mind, our mental health is dependent upon it. Our immune system is dependent on our mental health, and our physical immune system is dependent on it. So we got to do that. Then we have to make sure that we're eating the right stuff and not eating too much of the wrong stuff. We got to have good quality energy coming into our body. We need certain vitamins. We need certain minerals. We need whole and complete proteins. We need all the amino acids. This is not a time for experimenting with removing entire protein chunks out of your life, because here's the thing. Antibodies are proteins. The way your body builds antibodies is by breaking down the proteins you eat and turning them into smaller pieces, amino acids, then building antibodies out of those amino acids. So if you're on some kind of diet that restricts your protein intake or restricts entire classes of protein from your diet, you run the risk of not having the right proteins to actually build your antibodies with. Not a good idea. Then we have to make sure we move. Another physical need of the body. We have to move the body like we talked about. It's got to be moved. You got to work on its flexibility, its strength, and its endurance, its cardiovascular fitness. And then lastly, you got to get sunlight. It's really important to get some natural light on your skin, in your eyes every single day. I'm not talking about going outside and frying under the hot sun. I'm talking about getting 10 or 15 minutes of natural light on your skin, in your eyes every day. If we take care of our bodies and minds, then they will do the best they can to take care of us.
Eric, last question. How can people connect with you again so that they will remember it better?
Well, I think absolutely the best way to connect with me is on Instagram at Eric Edmeades. Come find me on Instagram. Come say hello. I can't obviously reply to everybody, but I do reply very often, and it's always me. I handle it myself. If they're curious about changing their relationship with food, they can go to getwildfit.com/reset. And if you just want to find out more about me generally, you can go to ericedmeades.com.
Eric, before we leave, I want to share to audience how I feel about you. So first of all, I have discovered you through a masterclass of Mind Valley, where you explained so clearly about how to read ingredients, which I have never heard of. And after that, whenever I go to shop at grocery store, I always look at the ingredients behind the food products, and I was shocked to know that many of them contain sugar and lots of chemicals. And from that onwards, I have eliminated them, and I have seen changes in my health, and it really helped me. And I have also educated many of my friends and family, and they have also benefited from your work. And I'm so grateful that you do this, and I'm very, very grateful for you.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm so very glad. I can tell you that there are a lot of things that give me, that make me feel nice in the day, that make it easy to enjoy my life. But stories like that, and all the people, all the messages people write me on Instagram and Facebook about turning around their health and recovering and no longer being in pain and having energy and all that kind of stuff. Just that's what drives me. I have a real passion for what I'm doing, and I appreciate you helping me get the word out there to the world. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Thank you, Eric. Guys, go and check out Eric's stuff. And if you go and check out all his stuff, you will say to yourself that you have found a treasure of wealth. Thank you, Eric, for coming again.
You're very most welcome. Subscribe to BNS Cool Great.